I'm Benedina Honkai. I'm the founder and CEO of Coalition for Racial Equity and Social Justice. We are really grateful that you're taking the time, from your busy life to join us tonight, and we hope you keep coming. Our moderator tonight is Abiho Honkai, and at this point, I would like to call on Abiho to start the program for us. Thank you, Abiho.
Thank you. Hi again, Abiho Honkai here. Thank you for joining us. As many of you know, we've created this space to have enduring, difficult, informative, honest conversations around racial justice and social equity and issues and events and matters that affect those concepts. So I'm very excited tonight. We have an interesting and dynamic and very talented panel of special guests. Dr. Nadia Ali is one of them, a functional integrative physician around mindfulness and burnout. She's a speaker and co-author of an Amazon bestseller, Thriving at Burnout. She's the founder and director of Functional Holistic Healing, a functional integrative practice focused on a personalized approach to identifying and addressing the root causes contributing to the development of chronic diseases. We also have tonight with us Wendy Sedlak. She's a certified health and wellness coach, a certified personal trainer, and a PA state certified teacher. Wendy has a deep passion for teaching others how to live their best lives from a health and fitness perspective. She has helped many people to solve lifestyle and dietary challenges in order to achieve better health. This session is entitled Beyond the Plate, Unlocking the Mind-Body Connection in Pediatric and Young Adult Obesity and Mental Wellbeing. It aims to raise awareness and educate people about the complex relationship between pediatric and juvenile obesity, nutrition, and mental well-being, shedding light on the impact of one's diet on mental health and body weight. As best practice, we just want to let everyone know that tonight is recorded. When you are not speaking, please remain on mute, excuse me. And if you're interested in speaking, please use the icons to raise your hand or drop a note in the chat. Now is a good time if you'd like to change your name as it appears on the screen or use an alias to update that information. As you join us, if you're new or feel new, please feel free to drop your name and contact information. If not, just your locale to let us know where you're visiting from. We also encourage participants tonight to drop questions and comments into the chat. Again, we've created this space to have safe, honest, and formative conversation around important, impactful issues. Welcome, everyone, and we're going to begin the program.
I'm Wendy Sedlak. Like you said, I'm a certified health and wellness coach, as well as a personal trainer and a certified teacher here in the state of Pennsylvania. I work with Dr. Ali at her office as her wellness coach, have for quite a few years, helping to bridge the gap between what she deems necessary for a person to do from a dietary perspective and a lifestyle perspective to attain their best and truest health. And I am still a teacher as well, so I have a unique kind of perspective on this particular topic that we have tonight on childhood obesity. Also, I'm a mother of 3, so.
Critical piece of information.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. Ali, I'm a functional physician and a mindfulness coach. And our goal as functional physicians is to be able to address the root causes of illness and symptoms, and the most important part about a change, lifestyle changes, which are primarily the root cause of chronic diseases. How do you change your mindset? And that's where the coaching aspect comes into the picture in terms of how do you make the change that you want to see in your life to achieve your goals. So that is the connection between being a functional physician and being a mindfulness coach. This area is an area which is of interest to me because I believe that a lot of the habits that we form actually start in our childhood. And so if we want to curb chronic disease, if we want to curb obesity in this country, we have to start from where it starts. And the start of the problem is after a child is born and what kind of environment the child gets, which is going to determine a lot of what he or she is going to face during his lifetime. That actually is the reason why I feel that childhood obesity is the place where we need to start. And I'm excited and glad to be here with everybody. And I want to thank Dr. Bernadine for the invitation. So, all right. So let's get started. So I'm going to start off with this model. I think it's a very important concept that I want us all to understand. And the concept is that this blue triangle indicates obesity. And if we look at obesity, there are two fundamental concepts that we have to understand. The first concept is about nutrition, which has a direct bearing on pediatric obesity. And the second concept is mental wellness, which is the second very important factor which influences pediatric obesity. If we look at these two aspects, which are the primary drivers of pediatric obesity, and we look at the way they're influenced, there are three places where you can influence these two variables. The first place is the home. The home is where we can influence the nutrition of a child and we can affect the mental wellness of a child. The second place is the educational institutions such as schools and colleges where the child goes, and they have a direct influence on the nutrition as well as the mental wellness of a child. And last but not least, one of the most important places where help is sought from is the healthcare institution or the healthcare system when we find that something is either not going well or we don't want something to go in the wrong direction. We expect the healthcare system to help us prevent and treat pediatric obesity. And so we'll be looking at the barriers that we have currently in all of the three different settings. I will be working on the healthcare system in my first presentation. Then Wendy will be looking at the home environment. And then we will come back to the educational institutions to be able to look at the bigger picture of why we are having such a hard time addressing pediatric obesity. All right, so let's talk about the objectives today. Our first objective is to look at the culture. What is the culture in our healthcare institutions? We want to look at what interventions we want to have from the policy perspective, which will have a profound impact on addressing pediatric obesity. And the third thing is we will talk about what kind of strategies do we want to apply to empower healthcare providers as well as parents to take action to curb pediatric obesity. So let's talk about definitions first. So when I say pediatric, I mean birth to 18 years old. When I say adolescents, I mean 10 to 19 years old. And when I talk about young adults, I'm referring to 18 to 24 years old. So we are currently witnessing an epidemic of childhood obesity because we see that one in 5 children and adolescents are obese. And when I say obesity, what is it that I really mean? So the definition of obesity between children and adults is different. In adults, we look at BMI, which is called body mass index. And anytime somebody is over 25 BMI or at 25 BMI, that's considered that the person is overweight. And if they are over 30 or at 30, then they're considered obese. In children ages 2 to 19, the definition of BMI is according to the age of that individual. So if you are between 85th and 94th percentile, the child or adolescent is considered overweight. And if they're over 95th percentile or at 95th percentile, they're considered obese. So if we look at this figure here, this is very interesting that this epidemic is not new. Rather, we are actually seeing that we had a problem even in 1999. And this problem has continuously increased over the course of time. And now it has reached to a point where many children and adolescents are suffering from it. So the question is that why have we not been able to address this problem? And one of the reasons we have not been able to address this problem is because we have looked at it as a problem of the child rather than a problem of the society. And so we'll be talking about how society is contributing to the development, progression, and maintenance of this problem. So what we now know is that Hispanic children are affected more than non-Hispanic Black children, who are affected more than white children. We also know that if the head of the household is educated, then there are less chances of children being obese in that household. We also know that socioeconomic status is another driver of obesity, which means the higher the socioeconomic status, the lower the pediatric obesity in that household. We know that preschoolers are found to have less obesity issues relative to school-age children and relative to adolescents. Now, here is the most interesting part. We know that if you are obese as a child, less than 5 years old, you have a 25% chance of being obese as an adult. But if there is obesity in a child that's 5 to 9 years old, then there's a 50% chance that that child is going to be obese as an adult. But if you have an adolescent that's obese, then there's an 80% chance that the adult is going to be obese. So I want you to think through it. So what we are seeing is that, first of all, that obesity continues to increase from preschool to school to adolescent age. And the more the obesity, the more likelihood that this child will continue to be obese as an adult, which means that this child is going to have all the consequences of obesity, all the chronic diseases which are linked to obesity when this child is going to be an adult. It also means that if you look at a less than 5-year-old kid, they're developing certain habits, and they continue to exercise those habits over the course of time, and that actually leads to more and more obesity. And so if we can change the environment of the child that's less than 5 years old, if we can change the habits there, we may be able to stop the obesity from continuing to rise as the child grows. Why are we concerned about pediatric obesity? We are concerned about pediatric obesity because this is the root cause of a lot of health problems. It literally affects every single system of our body, whether we talk about high blood pressure. And yes, we are seeing high blood pressure in kids. It causes high cholesterol. It increases the risk of diabetes. It actually can lead to fatty liver, and I've seen fatty liver in teenagers. It can lead to gallstones, sleep apnea, which is basically a condition where you're not able to supply oxygen to the brain, especially important for children because they're developing their brain. We also see hormonal issues such as polycystic ovary disease in girls, as well as early puberty. Of course, it increases the risk of heart disease once these children get into the adulthood. In addition to that, there is definitely psychosocial impact, which means that these kids are more likely to have more anxiety, more depression. They are going to have issues with eating disorders. Their academic performance is going to be affected. These kids are also at risk of asthma. Intracranial hypertension is a condition where they actually have increased pressure of the brain. Asthma, headaches or migraines, tiredness, as well as orthopedic complications, which is basically complications with the development of their legs. They're at increased risk of fractures, as well as musculoskeletal discomfort and symptoms related to pain. So now we're going to look into a story of Aisha to help us understand, how these kids are affected. So Aisha is a 10-year-old girl. Her father is a bus driver and her mother is an office assistant. They're both full-time workers. The grandmother lives close by and she has a younger brother. Both the parents are overweight. If we look at the socioeconomic status of Aisha, she belongs to a lower middle class family. What that means is that, she is in a low income neighborhood. That means that there is going to be lack of access, meaning that she will not have access to healthier food options. They have a supermarket which sells vegetables and fruits, which is a 30-minute drive. The small stores nearby do not sell fruits and vegetables, and they have a lot of fast food restaurants in their area. Aisha is in the 4th grade. Her grades are okay. Her teacher has expressed concern that Aisha has difficulty focusing on her home assignments. She looks tired, and she has been found to have some anger control issues recently. Her grandmother is providing childcare for her, especially when her parents are not home. Now let's take a look at Aisha's diet. So if we see what Aisha is eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's very clear that all her choices in the breakfast, such as cereal, bacon, sausage, her lunch choices, such as chicken nuggets, fries, are all processed. And even at dinner, she is mostly having packaged food. The mother does not have a lot of time to cook, so she cooks maybe once or twice a week, and she has a limited repertoire in terms of what she can cook. And then, of course, they order pizza at times, and then they go out to fast food restaurants once in 2 weeks or so. So it's very clear that Aisha is a child who is being exposed to a lot of processed food. And of course, she likes candies and Snickers. Now let's talk about the home environment. Aisha's home environment is that there are conflicts between parents. Now remember that conflict is not bad. There are conflicts anytime when there are more than one person making a decision. The issue is, how do we address the conflict? How do we manage the conflict? The father has some anger issues, so it's not surprising that Aisha also has been found to have anger issues. Aisha's sleep time can change, sometimes midnight, sometimes 1 o'clock, and she is obviously on the cell phone after she comes from school. Her parents are not around. Then she watches TV while she is having dinner. And then after dinner, she's again on her cell phone. She wears glasses. She's overweight for her age. She complains of headaches, tiredness, and sometimes anal itching. She has been exposed to multiple rounds of antibiotics as a child because she used to get a lot of ear infections. Unfortunately, because she feels tired, she doesn't engage in a lot of physical activity. So if we look at the obesity assessment, the most common method of looking at obesity in children is body mass index. Body mass index is simply a way of calculating your height to weight ratio, and this allows you to make a determination of whether somebody is overweight or obese. There is a big problem with this assessment. The problem with this assessment is it's not the best predictor of adiposity, or basically obesity in young, overweight, and obese children. And the reason why it's a poor predictor is because it does not take into account the degree of muscle mass, the bone mass, the fat mass, as well as the distribution of fat mass. Because it is very important not only to look at the amount of fat, but it's very important to look at the distribution of fat. Because the fat in the arms or legs does not contribute to problems, but the problem is the visceral fat, which is the fat in the belly, which is where inflammation comes into the picture, and that is where a lot of health problems come into the picture and mental issues come into the picture. So what is visceral obesity, which is what I just talked about, that it is accumulation of excess fat in the belly, and that is where You find a lot of health issues, whether we talk about heart attack, stroke, whether we talk about insulin resistance, diabetes, high blood pressure, as well as fatty liver. And inflammation. So this is how to look at that. So there is this concept of apple versus pear shape. So if you see in the first picture, if it's an apple, it means that the obesity is above the waist. If the obesity is above the waist, that is what we call visceral obesity. And that's a bigger risk than somebody who actually has obesity below the waist. And so a better way to look at obesity is to look at the waist to hip ratio. Here is an instrument that we use in our office to look at body composition analysis. And this basically looks at the amount of lean mass, the amount of fat mass, and this also looks at the distribution of the muscle mass. This also looks at the distribution of the fat mass. It also looks at the water content. And this is a much better way to be able to look at the issues objectively in terms of what is the degree of fat, where is the fat located. So Aisha visits the doctor, and when she visits the doctor, the mother of Aisha is told that Aisha's BMI is borderline, which means that she is overweight and she's not obese yet. Of course, the mother is concerned, and she expresses that concern to the physician, who basically says that Aisha needs to eat well and exercise. Interestingly, this is a very non-specific advice, which I think eat well can mean anything, and it depends on who you talk to. Again, an exercise, what does the exercise mean for Aisha? Like, obviously we cannot expect Aisha to be on a treadmill. And so this advice is very difficult to really follow or even understand for that matter. Obviously there were candies in the office for the kids, which again is sending the signal that it's okay for the kids to have candies. So what is the healthcare culture that we have, which is actually creating a problem in terms of aggravating the problem of pediatric obesity rather than addressing it? So the first thing is that we have to remember that each pediatrician is seeing between 40 and 50 children a day. There is no time for a physician to sit down and talk to Aisha's mother about, okay, so what's going on? What are you feeding your child? What kind of physical activity she engages in, so on and so forth. So this expectation that a physician will be able to take 30, 40, 50 minutes of his or her time to be able to do prevention is not going to be possible. The second issue is that a lot of physicians are not even trained in nutrition, and they're not trained in how to prescribe physical activity, and they're also not trained in counseling. So that's the second barrier, that even if the provider decides to sit down, is he or she trained to do what he or she is being expected to do? The other very important area is the reimbursement area. So if a physician provides counseling to a patient for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, the reimbursement for that is $23. You can do the math. I'm not going to go into whether it's adequate or not. But if the same physician treats Aisha once Aisha develops diabetes, then the reimbursement is $150. So what is the incentive for a physician to be able to sit down and do prevention and do preventive counseling? The other issue that we have is that if there are symptoms that a child has, then often those symptoms are not addressed. Like, for example, we said Aisha was fatigued, she has headaches, she has some migraines. So in our healthcare system, we don't address things until they're severe. Prior to that, we basically tell the patient that you just take something over the counter and everything is going to be okay. And so this approach of not really addressing the problem early on is a problem, because Aisha is on the borderline BMI, which means that she's already overweight. This is important to address, and this is important to address early, but that's not how we deal with things in our current healthcare system. And of course, the most important aspect is, what is the cause of Aisha's obesity? Is it just the nutrition? Is it just the physical activity? Or is it more to the story than that? And that's a question we do not ask in our current healthcare system. So here is the trunk of the tree, consider that to be obesity, and all the circles in blue indicate the root causes of obesity, which we're going to go into detail, and the branches are all the outcomes that are associated with obesity. So if we look at the root causes of obesity, what we see here is that the first one that I will look at is the persistent infections. So infections, any kind of infection, if you remember, Aisha was talking about anal itching, and the question is, does Aisha has some kind of an infection that is causing her obesity? Lack of resources and access, that's another one. And that is very important because if there are lack of access to healthy options of food, of course it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for Aisha because she doesn't have the access. Does she have the resources to access healthier version of food? That's another problem. The next one, I'm having a hard time looking at the next one, to be honest with you. I'm going to go back. So the next one is microbiome. So microbiome is basically gut bacteria. Gut bacteria play an extremely important role in obesity, and we will talk in detail about how they play that role. The next one after that is hormones. The question is that if there is hormonal imbalance, even if the nutrition is good and the physical activity is there, will Aisha be able to lose weight? And the answer is no. Medications, if you remember, we talked about Aisha being exposed to antibiotics. We know that medications are another source of obesity, and we will go into more detail of that. Another very important variable is toxin exposure. Is Aisha being exposed to toxins? Because if she is, then toxins are another reason why children can gain weight. We've already talked about diet and physical activity, fatty liver. So it's interesting because visceral obesity causes fatty liver, but fatty liver makes it very difficult to lose weight. So this is a vicious circle if a child develops fatty liver. Nutritional deficiencies are a very important cause of obesity. And with what Aisha was eating, she was eating a lot of calories that were lacking nutrients. And so that can also lead to obesity when your nutritional requirements are not being met. Inflammation is one of the very important causes of pediatric obesity. Trauma and stress, another root cause of obesity. And last but not least, food sensitivity is another cause of obesity. So I'm going to dwell on a few of them. One is the role of the gut bacteria. So this is a really interesting experiment which was done. They took a set of twins. As you know, twins are identical genetically. One of the twin was obese and the other one was lean. And then they took two mice that were the same size and same, weight, and they fed the poop of the fat twin to one of the mouse, and they fed the poop of the thin twin to another mouse. And lo and behold, in 5 weeks, there was a big difference in the weight of the two mice, as you can see. So the poop of the fat twin made the mouse much fatter than the other. And why was that the case? The reason is because the gut bacteria of the twin, the obese twin, were transferred to the mouse, leading to weight gain in that mouse. What it tells us is that our gut bacteria play a very important role in obesity. Now let's talk about hormones. So we are exposed to hormones through food. Aisha is being exposed to hormones through food. Hormones can be naturally present in meat and dairy, or they can be synthetically introduced in the animals, and then when we eat them, we are exposed to them. So if Aisha is being exposed to a lot of hormones, synthetic or natural, through what she is eating, that is going to affect her weight. We talked about toxins, and so there is a group of toxins which are called xenoestrogens. So xenoestrogens are toxins which act as estrogens, and we just talked about the role of hormones in obesity. So if Aisha is exposed to xenoestrogens, then she is going to gain weight. If Aisha is exposed to toxins, she will gain weight because toxins cause inflammation and they can also cause insulin resistance. So how is Aisha being exposed to toxins and xenoestrogens? So the first thing that comes to mind is pesticides and herbicides that we spray on our fruits and vegetables. The second is water supply. The water supply that we have contains a lot of industrial chemicals, processed food. And if you remember what Aisha was eating, she was eating a lot of processed foods, and these processed foods contain preservatives, flavor enhancers, etc., and those are all toxins. Another very important category is plastic products. So for example, if Aisha is drinking from a water bottle that's made up of plastic, she is using a straw which is made up of plastic. The plastic contains BPA and phthalates, which are toxins which can cause endocrine disruption or hormonal imbalance. Last but not least, personal care products. So perfumes, cosmetics, shampoos, conditioners, they all can contain a lot of chemicals which are toxins. And Aisha is being exposed to all of them. If you remember, we had talked about medications and I had mentioned antibiotics that Aisha had gotten. So antibiotics, we now know, are a very important source of obesity. Children who are exposed to multiple rounds of antibiotics before the age of 2, or who have been exposed to antibiotics when they were in the womb of their mother, are likely to be obese. And the reason is because antibiotics disrupt the good bacteria. They kill the good bacteria and they cause growth of bad bacteria and fungus. And Aisha was exposed to multiple rounds of antibiotics. Last but not least, this is a concept of leaky gut. So what is leaky gut? Leaky gut is something that happens as a result of antibiotics. So what happens is that the lining of the gut gets leaky, means it has holes as a result of exposure to antibiotics. And that leads to inflammation, which causes obesity. So if we look at Aisha, almost all of them apply to Aisha with the exception of fatty liver. So it's not enough just to talk about nutrition and physical activity, but we also have to talk about all the other reasons why Aisha is getting obese. So let's talk about the parental side. You know, one of the biggest problems that we have right now is that we have a hierarchical model, which means that the physician is considered to be the lead and the parents and patients, basically parents or the child, whoever is on the other side, is considered to be passive recipient. In this model, there is no partnership, which is a problem because any type of lifestyle change requires a partnership. So when you are in this model, both parties try to avoid disagreement. The physician tells you what to do and the patient does what they are told to do. Or they may not tell the physician that they disagree, but would leave the office thinking that they're not going to do that. And that is a problem because there is no partnership and no change is going to happen. The other problem is that we have a reactive approach, and reactive approach is not a problem just for parents. It's also a problem when it comes to physicians. What does that mean? It means that we do not act proactively. So for example, her BMI, Aisha's BMI was borderline. So we're not planning to do anything about it till she becomes obese. And that's a reactive approach. You wait for things to happen before you do anything about it. And last but not least, a lot of times our primary source of information is our physician. Now, there's nothing wrong with the physician being the single source of information, but sometimes it's good to be able to get information from other sources which are reliable. And I'm definitely not talking about Dr. Google, because I know there is a lot of conflicting information there. And I'm going to talk more about how to find the sources of information which are reliable. But getting to have more information gives us the power to ask the right questions and to find the resources that will help us and our family. So policy initiatives from the physician side. So one of the most important things we need to do is we need to train our physicians and our health professionals in terms of nutrition. And we also need to train them in terms of how to look at obesity as not just a nutritional issue or a physical activity issue. Last but not least, it's extremely important that more time is allocated to physicians to be able to do the counseling, and they are reimbursed accordingly. Any kind of lifestyle change requires that there is adequate amount of time spent to understand the other side, to understand the culture of the patient, to understand the preferences of the patient, to understand the limitations of the patient. And then it is going to require a lot of hand holding, because we're making a lot of changes, or we're expecting a lot of change to be made. And so this process takes anywhere between 6 and 12 months for somebody to go all the way from living a very different lifestyle to a very different lifestyle that we want that person to go to. So if we are expecting a lot of changes, then we have to give it time. It's not going to happen in 2 weeks. It's not going to happen in 3 weeks. It's going to take a long time, and we have to be able to give that time. And so we should reimburse the physician and incentivize them to be able to do this. From the parent side, what can we do? I think that even before the birth of a child, we want to make sure that parents understand what nutrition means for a child according to the age of the child. They need to know this so they can prepare themselves accordingly. Similarly, they also need to have a training in stress and conflict management. And these trainings can be provided at an OB office, before the birth of a child, because a child would mean a lot of changes for both the parents. It would also mean making a lot of decisions, which would mean there's going to be a lot of conflict. But if they are trained to manage conflict in a way that they're not creating a problem for the mental well-being of the child, they're not creating more stress of the child at home, then it would be a huge step towards preventing the child from stress eating, and obesity is also going to be curbed, because the child is not going to be opting for foods to comfort themselves. Nutrition assessment is another thing that we don't see. Nutrition assessment, we need to mandate that every pediatrician assesses the nutritional status of a child every 3 months from birth onwards. If we think that pediatric obesity is a problem, then we need to be proactive about it and not wait till everything is going in the wrong direction. And we need to reimburse the pediatricians just like we do for vaccinations, because this is critically important. Mental health assessment of parents and child should be done through a counselor every 3 months from birth onwards, or at least every 6 months, because we know that there is going to be change. We know that there are going to be issues. We know that mental health is important, and we need to be able to support it. We need to be able to help the parents and the children to be able to know what they're feeling, how they're feeling, and how can we help them cope with the stress that they're facing. Strategies for parents. So this is, I'm in the process of writing a book, because one of the biggest problems that I see in my practice is that we do not know how to navigate this healthcare system. And so there is an approach that I will be talking about, the TAME approach. The first letter T stands for thriving mindset. The thriving mindset basically is to be able to look at health not merely as absence of disease, but to look at it as optimal functioning of mind and body, which means that we are not going to wait for symptoms and disease to develop. We have to be able to look at ourselves, listen to our body, and listen to our minds, and be able to know, okay, this is what my body is trying to tell me. Let me figure this one out. Let me do what I need to do. And even before anything happens, you're able to do the right things. Acquisition of healing traits. So, I mean, there are a lot of things which come in acquisition of healing traits, but one of the things I will talk about, and I think I alluded to this earlier on, is acquisition of knowledge. And I'll talk about some of the sources that you can use for that. The third is mindfulness behavior. Mindfulness behavior means to know what you're doing, why you're doing, and how you're doing it, and when you're doing it. So, for example, if you are eating, you're asking yourself, what is the purpose of my eating? You know, is this the right time for eating? Am I doing this because I do it all the time? Or am I doing it because it's out of habit? Or am I doing it because that's what I've seen? Or am I actually doing it because this is exactly what I want to do? Like, how do you stay in the moment? How do you make sure that you are not just behaving out of habit, but you're actually thinking through what you're doing? And last but not least is engaging in therapeutic alliance, which is basically like when a parent is going with their child to a physician, right? How do they engage? Are they expressing their goals? Are they expressing their needs? Are they asking a question when they don't understand? So, for example, if Aisha's mom is told that Aisha should eat well and do physical activity, that's the point where she has to say, look, I don't know what you mean by that. Can you please explain it? And last but not least, I would say finding a functional physician. So a functional physician is a physician whose primary goal is to address the root cause of the problem. And I have seen a lot of parents, when they come to me, they say, why did nobody tell us beforehand that there was something like that? So I'm telling you, if there's a problem that you are facing and you want to know the root cause of it, then you can see a functional physician who would look at what are the different root causes. For example, in case of obesity, we talked about the microbiome or infections that you need to look at to be able to address the root cause. So here are basically some of the things that you can do for getting more knowledge. So there are a number of wellness podcasts that are run by physicians, and I'm emphasizing that they're run by physicians. I did not say nurses. I did not say physician assistants. So you want to go with somebody who actually knows their stuff. Reading books. There are lots of books by physician authors that have talked about the different health issues, talked about wellness. There are a lot of free resources that are often provided in these books and podcasts. One of the free resources we have on our website, www.theholistichealing.org, we have a free grocery list in case if you're interested what to have in your cart, you know, what are the healthier options? And that's something that can help you to kind of make the right choices. We also have a grocery tour that we provide where I take you to the grocery store and we actually look at labels. We look at the vegetables, we look at the fruits, we talk about what do we need to put in and why do we have to do that. And so if you go on the website, you will see as you scroll down, there's the healing grocery list and there's the healing grocery shopping tour. It's pretty inexpensive. Thank you so much for listening to me, and hopefully we'll address any questions after all the presentations are completed.
This just shows a little bit of the data. This is from a 2021 National Survey of Children's Health. This shows that in 1 week, 32% of children that were surveyed did not eat a daily fruit. 49% did not eat a daily vegetable, and 57% drank a sugar-sweetened beverage at least once. So all of those are problematic, as Dr. Ali just mentioned, that many children, the path to their obesity can be from nutrient deficiencies, and those deficiencies are certainly rooted in the children not getting enough vegetables in their diet, and perhaps eating too much fruit, and certainly drinking too many sweetened beverages. So those all lead to this path of childhood obesity. So this is the objective where we talked about cultural and socioeconomic influences in family dynamics. Number one, the standard American diet is the dominant culture in this country. So many families in our culture, in our country, eat the standard American diet. The standard American diet is basically processed foods, heavy in sugar and heavy in bad oils, essentially, and lacking in nutrient-dense foods. Processed foods and restaurant advertising campaigns are pervasive and aimed directly toward children. We know that on TV, on billboards, on the radio, there's a lot of advertisement, and they are targeting our kids, and they're showing cartoon characters, or they're showing toys. Lots of boxes that you see in the grocery stores have, they're targeting the kids. So they have things that catch their eye, bright colors and different cartoon characters that they see. And we need to stop that, because it's making children want to have those foods and thinking that they are, of course, they're not even thinking that they're good for them or not good for them. They're just children. So they want those foods because that advertising campaign is working on them. The third one is that parents are not trained in nutrition. Many regular conventional medicine practitioners are also not trained in nutrition. That's why functional medicine is another a good avenue, so that you can become involved and informed in your parent or in your children's health. Screen time is another aspect to the culture and our problem. As I mentioned earlier, that the advertising that the children see, if they have children's programs on, the number of cereal ads that you see are just incredible. That the children are barraged with so many different influences on them, and they don't know that it's bad for them. So we want to advocate for mainly centric policy interventions on pediatric obesity. Parents need to be educated in the area of nutrition. And it goes much deeper, obviously, than just providing your child with breakfast, lunch, or dinner. There needs to be quite a bit of education, as Dr. Ali said, even before you have a child, ideally, so that you know what it is that these children need. So many parents don't understand, as we aren't taught in even high school. It would be great to have some type of education for adolescents as they get out into the world, and then they have their own children. We really need to be educated in this area. Also, parents need to be educated in the area of exercise and movement. That's another big thing. And the TV watching kind of goes along with the game playing and all of the advertisements. It's just a vicious cycle, and the poor children are caught up in all of it. So we want to empower parents and caregivers for action. Just a little bit of my background. I met Dr. Ali because I looked into functional medicine after my youngest child became quite ill. As she said, if you have a lot of antibiotics before the age of 2 years old, that can lead to childhood obesity and many other issues. And that happened to my youngest son. And once he was 12, he was very lethargic. He had hardly any energy. He was sad. He couldn't keep up with his lacrosse team. He had to quit sports. And so I had him go to see Dr. Lee, and I did a lot of due diligence myself by researching and reading a lot and changing our diet and changing our lifestyle. And these were just things that I had learned along the way. And then we met Dr. Lee, and she really helped us to figure out the root cause of his issues and all the other things that we needed to do to make him a healthy kid. And now he is 21 years old and he's in college. So we were able to do that for him, but it took a lot of education for me, and it took Dr. Lee also helping us along the way. So one of the things I learned about in this walk that I've had to go is whole foods versus processed foods. And whole foods are obviously, as I told my kids, you know, God made food. Like, you didn't get it out of a box. And obviously that's what processed foods are. Foods that come out of a box, foods that are packaged, foods that are in the inner aisles of the grocery store. So we need to understand that eating something that actually grows in the ground is much better for us than processed foods that are found in a box. Learning how to prepare meals that include the whole foods and include children too in that preparation are huge in helping to educate the children too about why they should eat better. As I said, they're swayed by all this advertisement, and they don't want to listen to their mom or dad say that they should, you know, eat broccoli. But if they can learn how to prepare that meal with their parent, that's a nice bonding experience, and they can understand better about why it's good for them. And they feel, I think, invested in the process too. Removing seed oils and sugar sweetened beverages, sodas, sports drinks, juices from the diet. Everyone thinks that orange juice and apple juice, that those are good for you, but they're equally as bad as sodas. They're extremely high in sugar, and those absolutely have to be removed from the diet. And seed oils are another thing that have to be removed from the diet too. We need to move more toward oils like avocado oil, olive oil. Those are the types of oils that are so much better for you. Utilizing free internet resources. There's Pinterest. All you have to do is Google. You could Google what are the healthier oils or how to remove seed oils. There's so many different resources online now than when I went through this 10 years ago. Eating meals with your children as a family, that's huge. If it's possible, as often as you can, just that bonding experience and trying to curtail stress, you know, talking to each other, talking about any issues that the children may have. It's just a bonding experience, and it's also a great time for you to come together and share a meal and hopefully eat, you know, good nutrient dense food. Drastically reduce amount of times that your family dines out of the home. That can be a tough one, I know, for many families, because everyone is on the move, and there's so many things that take us out of the home, so many different activities. But that is one thing that we really honed in on and made sure that we did as a family. We would plan ahead to make sure that we had the things that we needed for healthy meals at home, so that we weren't tempted to run by that fast food restaurant on the way from activity to activity. Another way to empower parents is for sensible portion sizes, and that's another critical thing, because I think in our country, we have gotten awfully used to large portion sizes, adults and kids alike. And that just is an excessive amount of calories. And so we really have to get those portion sizes taken down to a better size. So there can definitely be barriers to healthy eating for everyone. And one of the #1 barriers is bad habits. As we just talked about, too much sugar, processed foods, habits and things that people can be addicted to, which is also sugar. Lack of time is another thing. As I just said, parents are so busy in between activities and work, and it's hard for parents to plan ahead. I totally understand that. Portion sizes, as we just talked about, and parental fatigue. That's a huge one. Everybody's tired. Everybody has a lot going on, and it is hard to plan and to create, healthy meals for your children, but I promise it's doable. So eating hygiene, that's one thing that I learned about 10 years ago. I didn't realize that not only do you need to have the right foods, you need to have eating hygiene, which includes eating slowly and chewing food many times each bite. There's a digestive system that your body has, and it needs to go through this system where it needs to view the food. Your mouth then needs to salivate. You're also smelling the food, and that creates the right environment for you to be able to break down the food and for it to go into your stomach, and the digestive juices are there. It's a whole process that I had never thought about before, but it truly is critical so that your body can get those nutrients from the food and also break down so that elimination is easier. Dr. Ali talked about mindfulness. So you don't want to eat while you're watching TV or scrolling on your phone. You want to be able to look at that food and have your brain being mindful that you're eating, and that creates the right environment for the digestion. Again, eat together as a family. So these are some things that we need to think about when we are planning meals, and we can't say enough about vegetables. There's so many different kinds of vegetables, so many different colors of vegetables. Different colors of vegetables are tell you, or don't tell you, but I can tell you that they mean different things to your body. So green vegetables mean one thing, purple vegetables mean another thing, red vegetables mean yet another thing. So you want to eat the rainbow, as they say, have so many different colors of vitamins, colors of vegetables, and that will provide many different vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. You want to eat 9 to 12 cups a day of vegetables, and I know that can sound crazy and it can sound overwhelming, but if you break it down into soups and stews, and smoothies also are another way to hide vegetables, you can get so many more vegetables in than you realize. So here's just some meal ideas. These are some breakfast ideas that are much healthier than certainly cereal or oatmeal. We have eggs, hummus, sliced avocado, fruit, smoothies. Ideas for lunches are turkey roll-ups, sardines in a glass jar, not in a can, veggies like carrots and celery sticks. Kids really typically like those kinds of things, cucumbers, and of course berries. And then the smoothies, as I mentioned before, you can have fruit smoothies, and you can hide some vegetables in there as well. Okay, so this is continuing on with the meal ideas for dinner: chicken, turkey, green beans, baked sweet potato, cauliflower, lentils. And you can Google, and again on Pinterest, there are so many different types of recipes for these things. So you can search on there. There are millions of recipes out there. Ideas for snacks are apple slices, veggie sticks, as we said before, almond butter, you can dip the apple in almond butter, and also boiled eggs are a great idea for a snack. Beverage ideas. So I always have told my kids, don't drink your calories and sugar. So you want to drink water, lots of water. Milk, if you don't have an allergy to dairy, of course. And a way to get children to like water a little bit better is if you can squeeze a little bit of fruit in there, like lemon or raspberry or orange. And a little bit of salt replenishes minerals, but also the children, of course, like the fruit taste. How to navigate the grocery store. So as I said before, all of those processed foods are really going to be on the inside of the grocery store. You want to try to stay on the periphery of the grocery store, so the outside walls. You're going to want to choose a variety of fruits and vegetables with all the colors of the rainbow, like I said before. You want to look for meats that are not processed, so chicken, turkey, beef, and stay away from deli meats. So it's important for us as parents to model this behavior and walk the walk for your children. I know it can be hard in making these changes. You can make baby steps. Take one thing that I've mentioned here to start with, but model the behaviors that you want to see your children emulating. So make these changes for yourself, and then they will be much more likely to follow suit. It may take some time for them to come around, but believe me, all three of my kids have done this. And they now make healthier dietary choices themselves. So if you make it for you, and they will eventually, it may take some time, but they will eventually come around. And make sure you're drinking water yourself and getting in movement every day too. So as I said before, engaging your kids in the process is huge. Have them help you come up with meal ideas. Let them go to the grocery store with you and let them help to make the list. Take them to the store, let them help with the shopping, and let them help you pick things out. Show them how to pick things out, and then engage them in the cooking process. They will be all the better for all of this, and it will help them to really be engaged. So movement is obviously a huge key to childhood obesity. We talked about video games and watching excessive amounts of TV. And of course, that takes them away from being outside and getting that movement in daily. So with the physical movement, just some ideas are taking walks, of course, and that provides time for you to bond with your child as you walk and talk. Playing physical games, soccer or tag, just being silly outside, getting that fresh air, and going to local parks are just some ideas of ways to get in daily movement. This is a slide about rewards. So you can have intrinsic rewards and extrinsic rewards. You want to have intrinsic so that the children want to do things because they realize that they're a good idea to do, but you can spend time together, as I said, going to the park or doing something active or giving them stickers or playing games with them. And that helps them to want to do them, not for an extrinsic reward like they could get with getting candy or fast food or, a lollipop or something like that. So this is just a quote that I love. It says, "We need to encourage our kids to love to eat real food, honest, nutritious, healthy food, less fast food, less junk food, and they need to see us eating by example." And spending time with our children by eating real whole foods and exercising truly is the best gift we can give. I learned this by example. I was already a personal trainer and a fitness instructor, so we didn't have an issue with the exercise, but as my youngest son became sicker, it was harder for him to exercise. So by implementing all the things that we have learned and we have talked about tonight really put him in a much healthier place. And that is it. Thank you so much for having me on here tonight. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali and Wendy, for such great informative presentation to us tonight. We couldn't thank you more. And we have a few more minutes to the end of our session. I don't know if anybody has any question for our presenters. If you do, could you please use the raised hand feature to indicate that you have a question for them or comments?
So Roberta Brooks does have a comment and question. Is there a difference, a significant difference, that is, between the nutritional value of fresh versus frozen fruits and vegetables? It's a great question.
That's an excellent question. So basically, you know, as opposed to what people think, frozen fruits and vegetables are actually healthier because they're frozen on the spot. Like as soon as they pluck it, they freeze it. The ones that we see as fresh actually may come from, for example, if you're in Pennsylvania, they're coming from California or Mexico. So they pluck it when they're unripe, and then they actually ripen on their way in, and then they go in and out of refrigerators or storage containers. So of course, frozen is better. And there's nothing wrong with using frozen vegetables and fruits.
That's interesting, Dr. Ali. That's, you learn every day about one thing or the other. I'm sure many of us wouldn't think that frozen food was more nutritious than fresh fruit.
So one of the questions that I received before the presentation was along the lines of what you spoke to with respect to medication and the effect that medication may or may not have on well-being. I know you spoke a lot about antibiotics. That was very interesting and informative. I haven't necessarily heard that perspective, but you know, what would your comments be, Dr. and Wendy, around the prescription trend, you know, for behavioral problems? That is, for example, there are a lot of antipsychotics and SSRIs that have been prescribed to young children that tend to cause weight gain, right, as a result of diet change, eating, etc. How does that play into some of the work you've done? What have your experience, has your experience been around possibly overprescription or the trend toward prescription to address behavioral issues, and that contributing to weight gain and a diminishment in well-being?
I think that's an excellent question. I'm currently treating a young girl who's like 18 years old who actually had mild anxiety. And so her mother took her to a physician and said, look, she's having some anxiety issues. It was actually social anxiety. She would have anxiety when she would be presenting, you know, in front of a class. She was given a medication, which caused a lot of problems. And then they gave her another medication, which caused even more problems. And so then she couldn't sleep because of that medication for anxiety. So then she was given something for sleep. So then she became more groggy in the morning. And so then they were like, maybe we should give her one more thing to deal with that. And then what happened is she was having so many issues. And then they felt that this just could be the different medications that she was on. So they thought we should just take her off of them. When they took her off of them, it was a bigger nightmare come true. Because remember that getting on medications is not as problematic as getting off of some of these medications, because you know you are changing the receptors in the brain. The brain actually tries to cope with how it's going to function in the presence of these medications. So now this girl actually became completely numb once they withdrew all the medications, to the degree she couldn't feel anything. Her imagination was completely lost. And so now we are treating her for that. So to answer your question, yes, there is a lot of overprescription going on, number one. And the overprescription is expected, because if you have 5 minutes to take history, you know, okay, so what is your problem? I'm anxious. I have heart palpitations. Okay, all right, we're going to give you medication. If I have to take this person's history, this is one of the reasons why I left medicine. Was I was sitting in a room with a woman who was divorced. recently. She was crying in the room, and I'm trying to think through. She's already feeling like, what's the purpose of her life, etc., etc., etc. I am feeling terrible because I'm worried she's going to make some kind of a major move, which is going to be harmful to her. And I'm getting knock after knock after knock. Dr. Ali, your second patient is here. Dr. Ali, your third patient is here. And it's true that they were waiting. But the truth is that what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just give a prescription to her? Because the prescription I'm going to give her will increase her risk of suicide. And she already is going there. So what am I supposed to do? So the first problem is that, the prescription is the response to 5 minutes per patient. But it's not really going to help the situation, because if you look at the data, if you look at SSRIs, which is the most commonly prescribed medication for depression, if you look at meta-analysis is a study of studies that have been done on something. If you look at the meta-analysis, we know that SSRIs actually work, but they work in patients who are almost suicidal. That's when they will work. But in mild to moderate cases, they don't necessarily work. They work as well as placebo. So the question really is that, there has to be other options. And the first question is to see what's causing the problem. What is the root cause of the problem? Because the mind is not separate from the body. And a lot of times people forget that we have two minds in our body. There is a mind in the skull, and there is a bigger mind in your digestive tract. There's a huge mind-body connection. The brain that you have in your gut is more powerful than the brain you have in your skull, because 70% of the signals go from the gut to the brain, and 30% go from the brain to the gut. So we are not asking the right questions. And the group of medications I was talking about, SSRI, which is extremely common now, the mechanism of action of that medication is that it increases serotonin, which is actually a neurotransmitter, a chemical messenger in the brain. But 80% of serotonin in our body is made in the gut. So why are we not targeting the root cause of the problem? So the biggest problem is that we have a tendency to give prescriptions, and we are overprescribing, because even if somebody has mild to moderate depression or anxiety, they should be sent to a therapist, as a first step instead of a medication. And the other thing which is happening is that we are also overdiagnosing things. For example, ADHD. We have now a lot more kids that are being diagnosed with ADHD because the child is running around. Well, the child is supposed to run around, That does not mean the child has ADHD. If you look at the diet of the child, he's eating like candies like 6 times a day. If he or she is not going to run around, who's going to run around, So I think that, we are really missing the boat here. And we are missing the boat not simply because it's a problem of health system. Health system is contributing in its own way. But there is also a lot of marketing going on from the pharmaceutical industry. There's a lot of marketing going on the television. Ask your doctor about this medication. This medication can cause your head to blow off and your kidney to fail. But this will really help X, Y, and Z. So talk to your doctor about it. Well, what to talk to your doctor about? I mean, did you see the list of side effects that was given to it? So I think that, but I would also say consumer is also at fault, because there was a medication that was being advertised for high cholesterol. And it clearly said, why you have to make lifestyle changes? Why can you not enjoy your cake and your pastries when this medication will do it for you? Okay, great. If you want a shortcut, you can have it at whatever cost you're getting it. So we have a society which is interested in, Band-Aids. It's interested in shortcuts. It's interested in quick solutions. So if you're going to get a quick solution, so I don't think we can blame one party for that, unfortunately. We are all responsible in one way or another. And we are overprescribing, and we are interested in being prescribed. A lot of parents call and say, oh, my child is having a sore throat and fever. I think this is strep. Can I please have antibiotics? What does that mean? And the pediatrician is like, okay, if I don't give antibiotic, I'm doomed. If I give, I'm doomed. I'll just give it. Okay, said, okay, I'm going to give it to you an antibiotic, because anyways, I don't have anything on the schedule to give you. So I'll just give you an antibiotic. So it's not like the physician is giving and the parents don't want. The parents want and the physician wants. I mean, there are two parties. They are completely aligned. So where do you go with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Where do we go from there? Yeah, and just, full disclosure, I have a family of physicians. I've represented pharmaceutical companies as well as plaintiffs suing them. So it's just a question for discussion. I don't land on either side. I think that there are a lot of contributors to the issue. 2 or 3 things, and I know we're getting toward the end here. If we have any other questions, please chime in. I did get some before our talk, so I'm just going to go to those questions. Some of the concepts that I've been hearing in the media and others are well-being versus wellness, or well-being versus health. Is there a difference? Does that connote some sort of mind, body, spirit trinity? Is it just loose language? Why well-being versus mental health or wellness or health?
I think it's loose use of terms, because one thing I would say is that unfortunately, health, the way we use in our society, is absence of disease. And this is what they're trying to counter it. Because if you look at World Health Organization's definition of health, they say health is not absence of symptoms and disease. Health is optimal functioning of body and mind and spirit, And so if it is optimal functioning is wellness. And so the idea is that how do you get out of the model that, like, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm very healthy. And you ask them, so what makes you think that? And they say, look, I don't have any symptoms. I don't have any disease. Well, that doesn't make you healthy, right? That doesn't work, because if you get into detail, they'll say, yeah, I do get a headache here and there, but it's not that I get it every day. Oh, I get some pain here, but that's not really every day. But that's not healthy. Why would you get headaches and this and that? And the best part is we live in a time where we have such advanced technology. It's mind-blowing. We can now tell a patient, like, so for example, if the patient is 52 years old, right? That's their biologic age. We now have the technology where we can do what is called telomere assessment. Telomeres are the tails of the chromosome, which determine the lifespan of an individual. And we can tell that if the organs of this person is actually 52, or is it less, or is it more? So we can actually tell the rate at which an individual is aging. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, I don't think I have seen, when I started my practice, I wanted to do preventive. And right now I do 95 to 96% diagnostic and treatment modality. Rather, actually, people are not even interested. If they have the choice between Botox and taking care of their gut health, they will go with Botox. So I think we have a lot that can be offered, but the question is that what is it that is in demand?
Right. And the frightening thing about disease is it doesn't necessarily, appear, on one's body or one's face or one's expression, right? It can be hidden. One of the last questions I wanted to make sure to touch from one of our contributors is around cost. All of this is great, right? But healthcare costs something. Getting in to see a doctor costs something. Preventative healthcare costs. Treatment costs. Buying healthy food costs. Any suggestions how to manage the cost?
So I think there are a couple of things, right? Mm-hmm. The first thing is that, so there are things which will cost. So if you have a scratch on the door, it will cost less versus you have a door in your hand, right? So if you have, for example, if you start off by saying, I'm going to have more vegetables and more fruits, they will cost you less than if you go and order something from a restaurant, right? Now you have Produce Junction where you can get something in bulk. You have Costco, you can get things in bulk. So you have to think through, what you're doing. You don't have to go to a doctor necessarily very often if you eat well, if you do physical activity, if you take care of your stress. But I agree that the cost of fruits and vegetables is more than getting a chicken nugget from McDonald's. Because a family value pack will cost you maybe $20, but if you buy a salad, it will be $15 per person or $13 a person. So you see, this is also where your society's values lie, right? Because what is the agenda on the table, right? If you open up any media, they're talking about, things which are not even connected to the human being, right? Right now, the person in the United States is in need for vegetables and fruits, but is that what media is looking as an issue? No. What is the issue? The issue is, what should we do with the baby in the womb of a mother? That's the question. But what about the babies already out? What about the human beings that are already here? What are we going to do about that? Why is that issue not on the table as much as all the other issues? So you want to discuss all the issues, you should discuss all the issues, but why are we not subsidizing fruits and vegetables, for our kids? Should that not also be an issue on the table in addition to all the other issues? So that is not an issue. We are providing subsidy to dairy industry and meat industry, which is actually causing a lot of problems. So I think that the question is that, the change cannot come until and unless there is really like when somebody is desperate for change. This is the one thing I've learned in my life. I have patients who come and say, Dr. Ali, you tell me I'm going to do anything and everything. And, success is guaranteed 90% in that patient. I had a patient, she said to me, Dr. Ali, I don't have much money, but whatever you tell me about the diet, I will do whatever. And I said, that's fine. You do what you can do. Because when there is a will, there is a way. And of course, it would mean that you have to spend time cooking, you have to spend time meal planning, but there is a cost to everything. And it's not just money cost, there are other costs as well. There's cost of time, right? And so, yes, not everything takes money, but there are a lot of other things which do require money. And for that, you have to advocate for the change. Are we there? I don't know.
I'd venture to say that's why we all are here tonight. So thank you for inspiring us to continue to advocate for change. And, I think what's key here, you've talked about education. Coming to this space and educating some of us who don't know where the gaps lie, right, around food, obesity, and how it relates to well-being, enables us to speak to this in schools, to our children who deal with other children. And, hopefully the goal is to level up and have an out-moving effect around education, access, opportunity, and, effects, positive effects. So thank you. Thank you for this informative discussion. Wendy, thank you for your contribution to it as well. I really appreciate the personal insight that you gave around, your family and your experience and how you connected with Dr. Ali. So thank you everyone for joining us. We're here every second Monday. We like to continue to have these discussions. Your comments and questions and feedback at the survey. On the survey will be used to help us to continue to inform, to educate, and to advocate on behalf of those who are under and less resourced than others. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Ali. Thank you, Wendy.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks
everyone for joining us tonight.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.